Hey everyone, we are now in Module 11, and that covers the physical and cognitive development in early adulthood. This one is probably going to be interesting for the students in this class because it may cover your age range. And so it might be weird discussing things that you might be going through or things that you have gone through in the past. This age range for early adulthood is typically known as between 18 and 25 years old. So exiting high school in your college years or exiting high school and starting a trade. And we're really going to talk about becoming an adult, the transition from high school to college, and the observation that we are going to have for this week is a TED Talk, and the TED Talk itself talks about, it's titled, Why Does It Take So Long to Grow Up Today? And so just some interesting things for us to think about and ponder because the world is not what it used to be when your parents or your grandparents entered this early adult stage. It's different today for many reasons. So let's just jump in here. When we talk about becoming an adult, there is something known as emerging adulthood. And that's really the transition from adolescence to adulthood. Again, 18 to 25 years old. And it's characterized by experimentation and exploration. Think about dating and school and job and more independence. All of that goes in there. Some key features: identity exploration, figuring out who you are, especially in love and in work, you choosing your own interests. Instability is something that goes into this age range just because you're not living the same life you had your whole adolescence and childhood, because most likely you are still you're not having the same relationship with your parents and your family. You're a little bit more self-focused and you feel in between. It is the age of possibilities, a time when individuals have an opportunity to transform their lives. And so there's a lot of decisions that happen at this point in early adulthood. Parents can play an important role in guiding and preparing adolescents for emerging adulthood. They can provide them with opportunities to be contributors into the family and to society. And some parents do a really great job at this, and some do not. They can give candid, constructive feedback and advice. They can create positive adult connections, and they can challenge adolescents at this age to become more competent. Again, just like in the early childhood and grade school years and through those adolescents, parents really do have a big impact on this age as well. The transition from adolescence to adulthood has a lot of markers. Holding a full-time job is something that typically happens during this time. Economic independence, because you have that full-time job, you have some money to spend in ways that you wish to, and taking responsibility for oneself. You're going to be taking responsibility for yourself through just natural progressions, and also legally. When you do things, you have to take responsibility for yourself if you are now choosing to do things that are not permitted by law. When we look at the transition from high school to college, there is this idea of this top dog phenomenon, and we saw that when students went from middle school to high school, but this idea that although you were once on top, your senior year of high school, you were probably the top dog. Your next year, if you were entering the workforce and you are kind of the bottom of the barrel there, or if you are a graduating senior, you were the top dog going into being a freshman in college. That idea that although you were once on top, now you are on the bottom of kind of the pecking order. And so That's something that a lot of people go through. These people at this age range will be going a lot of times to larger school structures. If you do choose to go to college, your university is most likely going to be larger than your high school. You are going to be able to interact with peers from a more diverse geographical and ethnic backgrounds. Most of the time, you are now associating with people outside of your communities. There's an increased focus on achievement and assessment. And this can lead to both positives and negatives. With that, there's intellectual challenges, time with peers, different lifestyles, and independence. But this also can lead to stress and depression. When we look at the physical development of 18 to 25 years old, we know that you really hit your peak physical performance between 19 and 26. So what's going to happen right now, guys? Your muscle tone and strength usually begin to decline at around 30. But health is really important. Like for all age groups, but a lot of times at this point, these people at this age range are getting to have more of their own options and kind of set up their own rhythms in life when it comes to eating and exercise. And so we can see that emerging adults have mortality rate twice that of adolescents. You guys are doing things, or 19 to 25-year-olds are doing things that maybe you were not doing a couple years ago, and they will not be doing in a couple years. There's more chronic health problems. They engage in more health compromising behaviors, drugs, alcohol, those type of things. They're more likely to be obese, and they're more likely to have a mental disorder than adolescents. So all of these things are going into play when we look at physical and cognitive well-being of this age group. Your health is always going to affect who you are and how you're feeling. When we look at eating and weight, obesity, we saw on the last slide, you're more likely to be obese during this age range. And it's linked to an increased risk of hypertension, diabetes, cardiovascular disease. It's associated with mental health issues. And there's a lot of factors that go into this. Heredity, environmental factors, for example, the decline in activity. You might not be playing college sports anymore or have the free time to be able to shoot hoops after school. A lot of times low SES versus higher SES. When we talk about how much income do you have and what are you doing with that income, a lot of time when we see lower SES populations, we also attribute that with maybe not getting as much nutrients from fruits and vegetables, eating lean proteins, those type of things. And then the idea of dieting versus dieting and exercising programs, just really being purposeful in taking care of yourself. We talked about eating and weight. Along with that is regular exercise. It helps prevent chronic disorders. Aerobic exercise is really important. Sustaining exercise stimulates heart and lung activity, which is very important. Exercise gives us a lot of benefits, both physically and mentally. Just for the mental health, anxiety and depression decrease as you are exercising. And there are some ways that, some strategies that we can use to make sure that we are getting in this regular exercise. We can reduce screen time and replace it with exercise. Maybe instead of unwinding by watching something on your computer or your phone, try putting that down and seeing how it feels to unwind by just simply going for a walk. Chart your progress. That really works for some people. If you can map out if you've hit certain goals throughout the week, get rid of excuses and imagine the alternative. If I don't make myself exercise, what is my life going to be in a couple years? One of the things that we were talking about in engaging in more health compromising behaviors a couple slides back was the idea of substance abuse. This really is something to be talked about with this age range, because legally right now you are able to make more choices to choose substances that are not healthy for you. When we look at the word addiction, it kind of has two strings with it. The first is there's an overwhelming involvement with using a drug. You're thinking about it a lot. And then there's also a preoccupation with securing its supplies. If you're thinking, how am I going to get this? And thinking about when you can use this certain substance, that really shows signs of addiction. When we look at alcohol abuse, a lot of times it's happening pre-gaming. Men and women are drinking at home before events, think like sporting events. There's binge drinking. If you have more than 5 drinks in a row in the past 2 weeks, that is considered binge drinking. Extreme binge drinking is 10 to 15 or more drinks in a row. And then alcoholism is the idea of long-term, repeated, uncontrolled, compulsive, and excessive alcohol use impairing users' health and relationships. That is something very serious. Just to look at those and maybe do a quick assessment of your life and if you fall into any of those. When we look at the mortality rates of U.S. adults and emerging adults, I just want you to take some time really quick to look at ages 12 to 17. And the colors there, you can see males and females dying from unintentional injury, homicide, suicide, and then other. And then on the side there, we can see that this is deaths per 100,000. And then from ages 12 to 17 to ages 18 to 24, how much some of those jump up. A couple slides ago, we talked about the idea of unintentional injury. Car accidents, you are suddenly allowed to do things that are unsupervised. You can make your own choices. Just the jump between males' unintentional injury when they're in their adolescence to early adulthood doubles for sure. And then there are other things there. Just look at the males, homicide, suicide, and then other. Those are just some really big numbers. For sexuality during this age, sexual activity in emerging adults. There are certain patterns of heterosexual behavior. Males have more casual sex partners, while females report being more selective with this. Women are still under stricter social norms and criticized for having multiple sexual partners in contrast to men. Approximately 60% of individuals have experienced sexual intercourse with at least one partner by the end of that age 25. And casual sex is more common in emerging adulthood. Heterosexual attitudes and behavior from 1994 survey. In my opinion, 1994 was a very long time ago, but this is the survey results that they give. Americans fall into 3 categories, and you can see the frequency of sexual activity there. And then married or cohabiting couples have sex more often than non-cohabitating couples, so if they're living together. And then there is a study from 2017 at the bottom there, and it reports that sexual pleasure and intimacy predicted more positive effect and less negative effect the next day. We can look here, sources of sexual orientation. 3.8% of U.S. adults report being gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transsexual. And again, I would argue that this is constantly changing. Whenever this book was published was most likely a couple years ago, so I'm sure that the numbers are higher. Sexual orientation is a continuum from exclusive male-female relationships to same-sex relationships, and then some bisexual relationships, but that continuum meaning that's kind of like a slide that that you can go on there. Most likely a combination of genetic, hormonal, cognitive, and environmental factors is what the text is saying about sexual orientation. And then whether heterosexual, gay, lesbian, or bisexual, a person cannot be talked out of his or her sexual orientation. Attitudes and behaviors. Nope, I'm skipping on. There we go. Sexually transmitted infections, or STIs, are diseases contracted primarily through sex. HIV is of the biggest global concern. 37 million individuals living with HIV around the world. Half of all new infections are in that 15 to 24-year-old age cohort. And there are effective strategies for protecting against HIV. You need to know your risk status and that of your partner. Obtain medical examinations, have protected sex using condoms, and do not have sex with multiple partners. All of those things are effective strategies to protect yourself against HIV. For these right here, there are the next 3 slides. I really just want you to, you can even pause it and just look over this. The different STIs, the description, the incidence, and then the treatment is just really good information. And with it being in this type of chart, it just breaks it down really nicely. So I am going to stop talking, and you can just pause your way through these slides, but be sure to read all of them. Of course, we're going to talk about Piaget. We have for every age group. But Piaget's view of this 18 to 25-year-old or 24-year-old age cohort, he places this age group in formal operational thought, and it's the final stage, says Piaget, in cognitive development, and it characterizes adults as well as adolescents, so it kind of encompasses both of those age ranges. Post-formal thought is considered, these people are considered to be reflective and provisional. They are influenced by emotion. Wisdom and meaning are important developments in emerging adulthoods, and these things can be contributed by critical life experiences, how they reminisce about something, their reflectiveness, openness to experiences, emotional regulation, and humor. All of that goes into the person that you are becoming. When we look at creativity at this age range, creativity is not just for kids. We can see that qualifying any conclusion about age and creativity, accomplishments are that there are a magnitude of the decline in productivity, contrast across creative domains, individual differences in lifetime output. And the big thing here is that adults can be creative as well. It's just how you are practicing your creativity. It's just like a muscle. Are you giving it good practice and good exercise? But it is not for kids. And a lot of people in their careers use creativity in a whole bunch of different ways. And creativity is not just simply art or music. We can see there that there are all kinds of different domains of creativity. When we look at careers, there's a lot of things that are changing. From the mid-20s on, individuals seek to establish their emerging career in a particular field. You might be doing that right now. You're kind of finding a path and a purpose to what you are going to do with your life. But only 20% of that 12 to 22-year-olds had a clear vision of what they want to go, where they want to go in life. Students focus only on short-term goals typically, and they don't explore the big long-term picture of what they want to do in life. When you are looking at your occupational outlook, we can see that it's important to be knowledgeable about different fields and companies, so make sure that you're educating yourself on those. And 74% of employers say they want to hire recent college graduates, so that is good for the students in this class. There are a lot of impact in your life from working, of course. Most people spend about a third of their lives at work, and that includes working up to 50 hours per week. That's pretty common. Important consideration is how stressful the work environment is. And so looking at that, that's physical and emotional stress that can happen, has a negative impact on your life. And there are some of us that are working during college. 78% of college students are working. And then there are also cooperative programs or co-ops that you can have a paid apprenticeship in a field that you are interested in pursuing. And that really is by field. I know that student teachers are not going to have a paid apprenticeship. You are going to end up paying credit hours for it. And a lot of times in business, you might get a paid co-op program. Some things just to look at, though, when we are looking at careers and work, unemployment. Unemployment produces stress and is related to physical and emotional problems, marital difficulties, and homicide. Dual earner couples, these are people who are living together, who are dating, who are married, and they face special challenges in balancing between work and family life for two working adults. And of course, we are going to see diversity in the workplace. Women have increasingly entered the labor force. There are more women in the workforce than there used to be. And there's increasing ethnic diversity requires a sensitivity to cultural differences and an appreciation of the cultural values that workers bring to a job. And so, like we talked about, you're going to meet people that maybe you have not met before that come from different backgrounds or cultures or ethnicities, and that is just something, a benefit of working maybe not in your community or leaving the high school setting. Go ahead and do a reflection over this. In our Canvas site, you can see the points that I would like for you to write on. Remember, each one of those topics gets one full paragraph. I look forward to reading your reflections, and if you have any questions, please let me know.